Hello and good morning again. We'll share our screen. Let the adventures begin. We are in Genesis chapter 12. Excuse me, not 12. We've moved on from 12. We are in 14. Genesis chapter 14, which referred to as the Battle of Siddim and dealing with a gentleman called Melchizedek. So we talked about this some last week. We'll take a little more time this week to kind of get the big picture of what's happening here and go from there. So again, we're looking in the time of this battle is 1872 BC. We're in the Middle Bronze Age in the land of Ur. It's being ruled by Ur-Nammu, ruling over Shinar. Egypt has its split kingdom where we've got two different pharaohs at the same time. In the 10th dynasty in Heracleopolis, we've got Kedi IV, Abram's pharaoh. Down in Thebes in the 11th dynasty, they've got their pharaoh. So here in 1872, Abram's about 79 years old and Sarai is about 69 years old. So again, big picture of what's happening here. We've got Ur-Nammu, we'll use the Bible name Amraphel. He is the king over all of Mesopotamia from the city of Ur. And he has someone working for him, Chedorlaomer, over there in Elam, who is his enforcer, his tax collector, etc. And so for years, 12 years, these kings of these local cities over by the Dead Sea, they've been serving, but they rebelled in the 13th year. And now in the 14th year, this battle happens. So these 5 kings in the south rebelling, well, the rulers, they get 4 kings together from the north and they come down and battle them. They defeat the rebels. And now on their way back up, they go through one of the rebel cities, Sodom, take a bunch of spoil and booty, including Abram's nephew Lot, and move on their way up north. Well, escapees come and tell Abram, he gets 318 folks together and they go up north and they engage them in battle and rescue Lot and bring him back home. And it's on his way home when he comes to Jerusalem that he meets Melchizedek and the new king of Sodom, and we'll go on from there. So let's read again Genesis 14 to get a sense of this, and we'll break it down once we go. So Genesis 14:1, it came about in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Elasar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goan, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, with Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah, and Shemeber, king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor. All these came as allies to the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and defeated the Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, and the Zuzim and Ham, and the Emim in Shava Kiriathim.
I'm sure glad you can pronounce all that.
I'm just faking until I make it, brother. Say it fast enough and keep moving forward. And
It's all that butter.
yeah, yep. See, enough grease will just lubricate everything and just keep it moving.
You notice I was not home.
And the Horites in their Mount Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Verse 7, then they turned back, came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, conquered all the country of the Amalekites and their Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. You know what? Let's pause here. Let's actually take a look at what we're talking about, kind of help us figure this out and see what we're reading and hearing.
Well, for one thing, there's those ites again.
There are those ites, yep.
The Amalekites and the Amorites.
Yep.
So Eric, when this was written, would the people reading this know who they were talking about?
Sister Ashley asks a great question, because the people reading this, Moses is writing this in the 1400s, from 1446, the Exodus, to his death in 1406. So in that 40-year period. Well, this is the 1800s. This is 400 years before their time.
Yes.
So number one, they're familiar with the events because it's been orally passed down. But number two, and this is a very important point, as things are written, when Moses wrote, he wrote things that they were familiar with. He wrote in context they were familiar with. He describes the Garden of Eden in present tense because of the way he uses references that were in existence at that time that were still in place. And after Moses, when he writes about the flood, he uses the calendar that they're on, that God gave them and established for them, to put the dates to the flood, the month and the day that the different events happened in Genesis chapter 6 and 7 and all that. Later on, as Moses' writings, after he's long dead, after his writings are copied and copied and copied, what people would do in their current time is they would update the names of places because names change. And so they would replace it with what people recognize it as in the present time. Again, the Bible is always, always, always meant to be understood by the quote unquote lay people of every age, every time it's copied and written. This is meant for us to understand today in our language.
Because obviously we have the technical knowledge and the Googles, and so we can look back to the
Right.
past with ease, right? I mean, if we want to know how to get to the Circle K in the next city over, we can program it into our call, you know. So for something like this, it seems to me it does serve two purposes. It serves a historical purpose, and then it does serve as a reference for us. But I was wondering if in that day of Moses, if this was, you know, would someone who would come along and read this be like, oh, well, I remember that guy. You know, I remember when that happened. I mean, I know we say history proves itself out, but I'm talking, you know, on a smaller scale as the scripture was being written.
Well, understand when I say this, back in their day, in their schools, they didn't have a thing called social studies. They didn't have a thing.
Right.
They weren't studying liberal arts. They were understanding their culture and the history of the world. And they knew about Sargon the Great. They knew about all these different things. So when they read Moses, they say, yes, this fits. Everything I see in the world around me is a result of what Moses wrote about, you know, Genesis and everything. So there was definitely more of a recognition then than we have today. I mean, it's a running joke. Two things that I get a kick out of: when there's a report that comes out about all the crazy things our government is spending money on, you know, checking, having monkeys do drugs and checking, and things like that. And the other thing I get a kick out of is what's being taught in colleges these days. You know, studies of different things. You know, you could take a college class on Harry Potter right now. And so, yeah. And so, but what about life and things that have things that matter? Yeah, exactly. So we've kind of lost touch with the things that matter, which is why we're here.
I think,
I'm sorry, go ahead, sister. Go ahead, sister. Yeah.
But back then, not everybody had that writing that
Right.
they were talking about.
Mhm.
Moses, I mean, it was written, but it was what, in the church or the temple or whatever.
Actually, this is one of those things where this is something brilliant that God did with the invention of the alphabet, most likely through Joseph, is he made this accessible. Remember, the scriptures say, teach these things. Moses wrote, teach these things to your children. How are they able to teach it? The children, you know, in school, they would copy the books of Moses. So this was, again, commonly accessible. It wasn't locked up in the synagogue or in the tabernacle. And yes, it was responsibility of the Levites and the priests to minister this and bring this, but it was also to be taught in the homes. So this was, unlike what's been done with it since then, in its origin, it was to be in every household.
you know, we have information at our fingertips now. There's so much information that we can absorb and that we can use in context. But the problem is, I think in this day and age is there's so much available now that a lot of people, they just ignore the Bible, you know, or they'll take a different interpretation because there's just so much out there.
Why would I go to the Answers in Genesis website when I can go to TMZ?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of my point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's legitimate. Yeah. So kind of a zoom out here, give a sense of what we're talking about. Okay, so of course, here's Egypt over here, Promised Land over here. Here's the land of Shinar, Sumer, Mesopotamia, all that. Okay, so the players, we have Amraphel, the king of Shinar. Well, he is recognized as, right now, the king of Shinar is the king of the city of Ur. This is the Ur 3 dynasty. So this is where I disagree slightly with David Roll. He shows that Amraphel was Amarsin, a later ruler in the Ur 3 dynasty. He has this event with Abraham a little later in time. I don't see that fitting the Bible. The ruler of Ur 3 at this time in there is Ur-Nammu. So not something that really matters, but so Amraphel, the king of Shinar, is ruling from the city of Ur right here. He's king over all of this. So that's a lot. This wasn't just a local skirmish in Genesis 14. So Arioch, king of Elasar. Elasar is recognized as Asser, which would later develop into Assyria. So that's up here. We have Chedorlaomer, king of Elam. Well, Elam over here is where Susa is, which is where Daniel would be, Esther would take place later, Elamites leading into Persia and all that stuff. Well, that's all right here off to the side. Title, king of the Goyim, which means the nations. So there's the mountains right here, the Zagros Mountains. They're kind of a confederacy of the different mountain tribes. So you got the king of Shinar over here, you got the king of Elam over here, king of Elasar over here, and the king of the Goyim over here. So they're all from over here. And then you've got the rebels all over here by the Dead Sea. Bear, the king of Sodom, Bersha, the king of Gomorrah, Shinar, the king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Zeboam, and the king of Bela. It's all right here where this is happening. So verse 5 mentioned, and we'll zoom back into this over here, mentioned this city right up here, Ashtaroth Karnaim. In verse 5, it said, they defeated the Rephaim, or the giants, in Ashtaroth Karnaim. So that's up here in the north. Then it says in verse 6, and they defeated the Horites in Mount Seir. Well, that's all the way down here. And then in verse, so we can see, 41, move my slide numbers over. So there's Mount Seir down there, which would later be home to Esau's folks, the Edomites, who would displace the Horites. There are those ites again.
Yep.
So, and then it says in verse 7, they turned back, came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh. Kadesh is right over here, off from the Dead Sea.
And it's a lot of travel.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. There's the Dead Sea over there.
And they brought an
Kadesh.
army with them, correct?
Oh,
This was
yes.
an entire army.
Oh, yeah, and we're going to mention the size of the army too. From the, what's that?
I want to talk about,
On foot, yeah.
I want to talk about the giants.
Yeah, they're giants in the land. Rephaim, the word Repha means ancestor. I am is plural, like ites. So it means the plural of the ancestors as they're referred back to. They're recognized as being tall in stature and precursors of the Philistines and Goliath the giant and things like that.
So we're talking, I mean, we're talking really, obviously larger
Mhm.
to be referred to as a giant.
Exactly.
right? We're talking really tall people.
Mhm. Well, Goliath was, what the Bible say, 9 feet something? Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
how
that
tall
is, I mean.
Well, we
Bigfoot.
considered 6 feet tall. so-
Well,
Well, right.
Well, remember genetics and Tower of Babel and separations. And so you've got clusters of gene pools where things are repeating and being more predominant traits.
Do we have big skeletons? Like
There are
show
some, yes.
People this tall?
You have to be very careful researching that because you'll come across a lot of hoaxes.
Sure, sure.
So yeah, but yeah.
But I mean, that would be interesting
Mhm.
to.
Yeah,
Because when we think of someone 9 feet tall, we think of someone who's, got,
a Laker.
Well, maybe, yeah, but even some of those guys are like 7,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, they're 7 feet.
So 9 is when you start, and then you start having the health.
Yeah, they don't have
issues.
long
They
lifespans.
don't have long lifespans and stuff. So that's why, I mean, and then here, they beat them.
Yeah.
Right? They beat them.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't mean to get off on this tangent.
No, you're fine. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they fought them and won. So.
Exactly.
They have below the belt.
Yeah, because they couldn't reach any higher. That's a-okay. We're supposed to enjoy looking at the Word of God and looking at it together. That's what it's all about. So we have Chedorlaomer over in this area that we mentioned. It's now known as Khuzestan. Way over off to the right here. So let's get some pictures just to get a sense of the environment. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention, since Sister Ashley and I will not be here next week, we'll worry about choir practice today. So in lieu of choir practice between services, if anyone is interested, I have a video clip to share. I've shared it before in Sunday school, but it's been a little while, that talks about the ice age after the flood, as we've discussed that a little bit, and the climate of this time of Abraham as a result of that. So we can show that between services for anyone who cares to see that. So don't forget that. So here is this area of Khuzestan where Chedorlaomer was from. And of course, these pictures are what it looks like today. Just giving us a sense again of different culture. It's over by the supposed tomb of Daniel.
If you go back onto those buildings, those were actual buildings that these people built.
These are buildings from in between the Bible times that we're talking about. And now this is more Middle Ages and the Muslim culture that arose after the 600s AD.
Where is this again?
This is Khuzestan province. This is where Chedorlaomer was from, in Elam. This would be, and we'll get to Susa in a sec, the capital. Yeah.
Yeah.
Writings on the wall. So still got quite a bit of lushness to it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah, I got a couple shots of this.
What is that?
Just kind of carved. This is just, the waterfalls and just the carvings. Yeah, it's natural. And they built around it. They left that alone and built into that.
Beautiful.
I think you said the country name is Kurdistan or what?
Khuzestan. Yeah, Kurdistan, where the Kurds is, and the Christian Yazidis and whatnot, is up in the north between Turkey and Iran and Iraq and all that. And there's the whole issue of the genocide against them and us trying to support them and deal with them. So they're kind of right in the middle of a whole mess. This is not there. Yeah, this is different. They built into it, yeah. Remember the mountain of God over in Eden, where we showed the troglodyte tribes that were built into the. Yeah, so obviously that's not there today.
What is what is their government?
This is Iran.
It's Iran.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So can you visit there?
At your own risk.
Yeah. Maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, when they were filming Patterns of Evidence, the Moses controversy, talking about the alphabet, there are some areas they couldn't go because at the time they were filming, ISIS was on the rise. And so, yeah. So that's Khuzestan province and where he was. So again, Chedorlaomer, what says they rebelled against Chedorlaomer, he was actually working for Amraphel, whose name means mouth of the moon god Sid. Again, the moon god was very popular at this time. So when they rebelled against Chedorlaomer, they were rebelling against the tax collector and enforcer for Amraphel, who was the king of all of this area of Sumer here. Yes, lunatic, yeah. Coming from Luna, moon. There we go. So that's why he was the one as the enforcer who led the attack. So, and their capital was over here, Susa, which become one of the capitals of the Persian Empire, where we have events from Daniel and the book of Esther.
That was at 300.
Yes, that was dealing with Persia, yes. The movie 300 takes place in between Esther chapter 2 and 3. About 480 BC. So again, we see some overlap in the photos here.
wow.
Yeah,
Look at that.
yeah. I love just seeing, again, God-given creativity and different art forms and expressions in different cultures. Mhm.
Yeah.
Offshoot of the Gilgamesh thing with him wrestling a lion.
So whoever was here was lucky to get these pictures out. So have to smuggle them out of the country.
Well, a lot of these are still tourist sites too. You
Yeah,
can
this is true.
pay your booking agent and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that's Susa, capital of Khuzestan province, the Elamites here, Chedorlaomer.
That's pronounced Susan.
Susa, yeah. Which is where we get the name Susan, which means lily. As we saw back in the day, they took the lily from the land of home and brought it to Egypt. And you see in the royalty, they have pictures of that lily. And so they carry that with them to remind them.
I remember you mentioning that with Susan in one of your messages.
When, yeah, I actually did a class on that on Sister Susan and Sister Ruby's last day here. I showed the ruby as the gemstone that's over the heart of the high priest with the, on the breastplate with the 12 tribes. And yeah. Okay, so then we have over further north here, we've got Arioch of Elasar, which this area that would become Assyria later on, right off the Tigris River here, which goes all the way up to Eden. So that's that right there. So here's, we're talking about the size of the army. Let's talk about that. So we have a 5,000 strong standing army there in Sumer with the, oh yeah. And so that's So Amraphel sends out 5,000. Here, the governor of Ashur, Arioch of Elasar, sends 1,000 troops. Chedorlaomer of Elam brought with him 1,000 spearmen and 500 archers. And then Tidal from the mountains in the north there, the Zagros Mountains with his confederacy, those nations, he brought 2,500 of his warriors from the Hurrian tribal confederacy there. So that adds up to 10,000.
I was saying, we're around 10,000.
Exactly. So they marched down the King's Highway along the area on the other side of the Jordan, come down to the land of what would be Moab, and come down past the river Karak, down to the Salt Sea. So let's go take a look over there. And the 4 kings and their forces fall upon the city of Bela, which is Zor. So let's pick up. Yeah, so let's go down to there. So here is Bela, which is later called Zor, over here on the Dead Sea.
Oh, they went that far?
Yeah, this is where the battle took place. The battle took place way over here. Yeah, on the south side. So here's the Dead Sea. There's En-Gedi and Sodom over there. Here is Zoar right here.
So we're talking at least a month of travel.
Oh, probably. Yeah, yeah,
Just so you can
That's what I say, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like-
Just to fight.
yeah.
Right, I was about to say that.
Yeah. Well, you have to bring provisions with you and hunt and yeah, all that. Which is why battles are often fought in the springtime and not in the winter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the summer, yeah.
so the 4 kings and their confederate forces fall upon the city of Bela, which is Zor, leave its walls toppled and the houses burned to the ground. So what happens, as David Roll kind of describes it here, those panic-stricken rulers and the citizens go across the bottom here, and they come up and they take refuge in Sodom, which is one of those, walled cities, like Jericho would later be, and all that stuff that Joshua would deal with.
This is kind of off the point. But
Yeah, go ahead.
We're talking skilled warriors,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Battle hardened and, oh, yeah.
ready to go.
Because we've seen the battles and nations overturning nations in this time frame that we've seen leading up to the Middle Bronze Age and Abraham and all that. And so, yeah, we're Sargon the Great of Agad. He conquered all this area. Then the nation of Gudi from the mountains, they came down and defeated his kingdom later on. So, yeah, so a lot of blood and battle in this time frame. Leading up to this world around Abraham. And after the destruction of the earthquakes and the fire and then the resulting plagues that just destroyed the early Bronze Age society, we got these outsiders coming in from the west and the north. And so they're invading the Indo-Europeans and they're dominating and taking over. And so you got that conflict as well. So very unsettled, chaotic, restless time.
Lots of battles.
Yeah. And so people are trying to rebuild society now after all this. There's there's a lot of nomadism. People are moving around trying to settle. So when they've got these cities here and they're rebelling from the high taxes of these folks from the north and the east, then the others come down and try to squash them. And so the city of Zor gets destroyed. So they come over and hang out in Sodom. So they get taken in. So the army from the Mesopotamia in the north, they go on and destroy in the south and then come on back up to here. So these folks are all huddled here. They come out and meet them in the battle of the Valley of Siddim, which is off to the side here of the Dead Sea here. So they meet on the west shore. The Dead Sea is also called the Salt Sea. So they meet here south of Sodom and they fight the battle. So let's read here. After verse 7, again, they turned back, came to Mishpat, that is Kadesh, conquered all the country of the Amalekites, the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar, which is En Gedi. Now, the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, and the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zor, came out. They arrayed for battle against them in the valley of Siddim. That's Genesis 14, verse 8. So verse 9. They arrayed for battle against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goam, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Lasser. 4 kings against 5. 5 are the rebels. 4 are the ones trying to squash the rebellion. Verse 10. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, and they fell into them. But those who survived fled into the hill country. Now, either during the course and chaos of the fog of war and all that, they actually got stuck in the tar pits and got sucked in and died, or they were killed in the battle and thrown into the tar pits. Either way, so that's where they ended up. 11. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, all their food supply, and departed. They also took Lot, Abram's nephew, and his possessions and departed, for he was living in Sodom. So the rulers squash the rebellion, they win the battle, and as they go up north, they go up to Sodom and they raid it. They capture Lot amongst others, and they're heading on, taking this north route on home. So verse 13, while Abraham is over here in Hebron, off to the side over here, let me zoom out a bit. So the battle took place over here. Abraham and Lot were together here. When they separated, Lot went to Sodom and Abraham went to Hebron. So they escaped. So we got refugees escaping from that, coming over to Hebron, letting Abraham know what happened. So verse 13, a fugitive came, told Abram the Hebrew. Now he was living by the oaks of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, brother of Aner. These were allies with Abram. When Abram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he led out his trained men born in his house, 318, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. So let's see here. But at the time, this is a perfect example, it was not called Dan because there was no tribe of Dan, because there was no son of Jacob named Dan yet. It was originally known as Laish. So here they go way up here where Abram follows the army to this place, ancient Dan.
So, but Dan is what it's called in our Bibles now, but it originally was not.
Yeah, originally, yeah. We'll actually see in the book of Judges when we get there, when the name was changed from Laish to Dan, and the crazy story of all that. So here is the ancient Dan, originally known as Laish. And there it's talking about the story, Laish becomes Dan. There's a model.
These are tourists.
Yeah, tourist pictures, yeah. People loading up different things. So Abram and his army of 318 come upon the victors of the earlier battle. There's an overhead shot, marker there and there. So that's ancient Dan.
And this is basically how it looked at their time.
This is, if you go there now, what you will see. And so, I mean, some of the nature, of course, is the same, but yeah, some of the, it was a lot more of a built-up society
Right, sure.
than we see the ruins of now. So Abraham went in pursuit as far as Dan, verse 15, he divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and defeated them, pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. Well, zoom out of that, zoom out of that. Zoom out from here. Damascus, which of course is still there today, Syria. There's Damascus way over here.
Wow.
So they engaged them over here, chased them over here to Damascus, which is where Abram had come through on his journey from Haran. So yeah, this is a big deal. This wasn't just a light skirmish.
Yeah, okay, if you follow that far.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
driven.
Oh yeah. So he beat them, verse 16. He brought back all the goods and also brought back his relative Lot with his possessions and also the women and the people. So hooray. So even though the local kings lost their rebellion, Abram was able to rescue Lot and bring him back. So before we go into Melchizedek, does anyone have any comments or thoughts or questions on this whole battle, everything that took place that Abraham and Lot got caught up in?
So my thinking is that, I mean, looking like you're showing us at the scope of this, this just shows that God was with him.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, with all the different players involved, with all the different locations involved, with all the
Yes,
logistical things that are involved. I mean, things that we probably can't even think of. But yet when we read it, we're just like, oh, they went here, 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 here. here.
Exactly.
We see it
and those names mean
going
nothing
on.
to us, so we go on our
Right,
merry
we see
way.
it all kind of in a little compact picture.
Exactly.
And then to think that these were what, people that we might not necessarily consider, like on our level of warfare,
Sure.
or whatever,
I do-
you know?
Was the kings that Abram slaughtered, that was Chedorlaomer, right?
There's uncertainty. The Bible doesn't specifically say that Abraham killed Chedorlaomer. There are some who read this that way. I'm very cautious. If the Bible doesn't break out the crayons and say it, I won't commit to it. It's possible. It's very possible. But all we know is that he went up, he caught them by surprise, he won that skirmish and was
This
able to
was the
rescue Lot.
10,000, right?
Yeah, or however many were left
He
after
only
the.
had 318. left.
Yeah, so however many were left of the 10,000 after the battle that they won against the 5 rebel kings, however many were left of the rulers keeping that rebellion in check, Abraham went up and was able to rescue Lot from them. Yeah,
So, but that's, I mean, that's.
it's like a small group of X-fighters going into this big Death
Right.
Star.
Yeah.
Green Berets, yeah, the Green Berets going in,
Green Berets, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't
Navy SEALs.
Yeah.
do that without the knowledge of
Mhm.
how to do that, and like I say, the logistics and the tactical planning.
Right,
and,
takes skill.
Yeah,
or, I mean, it's not, these aren't just
Ordinary,
primitive
everyday
people
people.
running
Right.
around, doing
and notice
stuff.
Abraham had a he's still Abram right now, but notice he has a relationship with his neighbors to where they join him in this and are able to help him with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Relationship with God.
Bingo.
Right.
That's the big thing.
Definitely, right?
And that's the big thing. And we'll see that in what happens with Melchizedek.
Because where else would you hear of, a smaller group going up against a larger group and
And
suc-
walking away, right?
yeah, and succeeding on that.
300.
Well, okay, yes, that was Sparta. This is Sparta. And all their muscles.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so a big thing to keep in mind too here, we have a good intentioned, unaware, sometimes bad habit of kind of, as was mentioned, reading these things and kind of bubbling off. Okay, that was nice. That was their little Bible thing over in this little Bible land, whatever, not realizing that this has a secular world impact and that it's all one. And we need to, and what I want to encourage, not to beat a dead horse, because I want to say this quite often, is that God's got the whole world in his hands. Everything that's happening in the quote unquote secular world is under him. And there's a huge interplay and interaction and intercause and effect between quote unquote the Lord's Bible people and the quote unquote secular world around them. They're impacted and affected by each other, and it's not bubbled off as we're not to be today. We're still to be in the world, but not of it. And let's not forget the not of it part, but we're still to be in it. Let's not forget that part too. And so aware, but unstained. So moving on. So Melchizedek, and what does he have to do with Levites and Jesus? So verse 17, after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Sheva, that is the king's valley. And so let's pause here. Let's go over to the Mount Moriah area where the Temple Mount is today, which we won't take a look at right now because that's much later in time. So over here, here's the ancient city of Jerusalem that was discovered by Charles Warren in 1867 from our Wednesday night classes. So over here, there's the Dome of the Rock, the Muslim thing we're used to seeing. Here's the Temple Mount where Abraham would later offer Isaac, where Solomon's temple would be built and all that stuff. So as Abraham's coming back from all of that, comes through here, and this is where this meeting is taking place. Verse 18, Melchizedek, the king of Salem, brought up bread and wine. Now he was a priest of God Most High. Salem is Jerusalem. Jerusalem basically means the city of Salem. Salem is Shalom, which means peace. Solomon is the name that means peace. The actual Hebrew way of writing Solomon is Shlomo. So when you see a Jewish person named Shlomo, that's Solomon. That's the same name. Yeah. When we talk about Shlomo Goren, we're going to see he was born 1917. We'll see at 50 years old what he does in 1967. His name Shlomo means Solomon. And we'll see what his last name means and how that plays in. Yep, which means peace. Absolutely. So here comes this guy Melchizedek, who Moses describes as priest of God Most High. That would be the one true God that we're recognizing here. He blessed him, verse 19, and said, "Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." He gave him a tenth of all. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give the people to me and take the goods for yourself." Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I've sworn to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, I will not take a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, for fear you would say, I've made Abram rich. I will take nothing except with the young men of Eden, the share of the men who were with me, Aner, Eshcol, Mamre, let them take their share." So the new king of Sodom, after the one had died in the tar pits and all that stuff, he says, "Hey, let's do this." And Abram says, "No, I'm not taking a thing. You know, God's the one taking care of me and God gets the glory." But let's go back to this Melchizedek, priest of the God Most High. Let's go to Hebrews. We'll look at chapter 5, then chapter 6 into 7 for a New Testament context. And I'll say right off the bat that contrary to what I used to think and what good men I love and respect still think today, Melchizedek was not Shem. Shem has been dead for 500 years. And there's a very important scriptural reason why it has to not be Shem. So Hebrews chapter 5. We'll read verses 5 to 10. So Hebrews chapter 5 from verse 5 to 10. Hebrews 5 verse 5. So also Christ did not glorify himself so as to become a high priest, but he who said to him, "You are my son, today I have begotten you," just as he says in another passage, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." In the days of his flesh, he offered up both prayers and supplications with loud crying and tears to the one able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his piety. Although he was a son, he learned obedience from the things which he suffered. And having been made perfect, he became to all those who obey him the source of eternal salvation, being designated by God as a high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So Jesus Christ is a high priest according to the order of this guy Melchizedek.
What does that mean?
We're going to actually get to that in the next chapter. Great question, very important question. Clearly, Jesus was of the tribe of Judah. He was not of the tribe of Levi. So Jesus does not qualify as a Levitical high priest. So why the change? Let's take a look, and we'll close here. We'll pick this up more next week. Not next week, but the week after.
A spoiler.
Teaser.
Oh, my God.
It's a teaser.
You do this all
Yeah, I know. And we'll reveal the answer right after this commercial break.
Right.
Yeah. And then he stands there for 3 hours.
Well, actually, what Ashley asked me during the movie was with 9/11, well, what were the warnings before this calamity and catastrophe? And I said, hang on, I wanted to see where he was going to go with it. But the answer to that question is, believe it or not, 9/11 was not the calamity. 9/11 was the warning.
The beginning. The
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah, the harbinger of, yeah. I mean, there are things that we saw coming because the more we depart from God, obviously that opens the door for all sorts of stuff.
Just gonna have to wait, find out.
Tell me after the movie. So anyway, Hebrews 6, let's close with this scripture. Hebrews 6, let's pick it up in verse, what did I say? Oh, I had it over here, my apologies. Let's pick it up. Go back over here. Hebrews, I wrote it down in my Bible in Hebrews. So in Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19 into 7:17. Okay, so read this to plant the seed for where we're going. So Hebrews 6:17. In the same way, God, desiring even more to show to the heirs of the promise the unchangeableness of his purpose, interposed with an oath, so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have taken refuge would have strong encouragement to take hold of the hope set before us. This hope we have as an anchor of the soul, a hope both sure and steadfast, and one which enters within the veil, where Jesus has entered as a forerunner for us, having become a high priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. Going into chapter 7, for this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham as he was returning from the slaughter of the kings. So, there we go. So he did kill the kings. Slaughter of the kings and blessed him. To whom also Abraham apportioned a tenth part of all the spoils. Was, first of all, by the translation of his name, king of righteousness, then also king of Salem, which is king of peace. Verse 3, without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God, he remains a priest perpetually. Now observe how great this man was, to whom Abraham, the patriarch, gave a tenth of the choicest spoils.
We're talking about the
Melchizedek. Yep, absolutely. This is Melchizedek. Absolutely. Good question. Verse 5. And those indeed of the sons of Levi who received the priest's office have commandment in the law to collect a tenth from the people, that is, from their brethren, although these are descended from Abraham. But the one whose genealogy is not traced from them collected a tenth from Abraham and blessed the one who had the promises. But without any dispute, the lesser is blessed by the greater, saying Melchizedek's greater than Abraham. In this case, verse 8, mortal men receive tithes, but in that case, one receives them, of whom it is witnessed he lives on. And so to speak, through Abraham, even Levi, who received tithes, paid tithes, for he was still in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. Now, if perfection was through the Levitical priesthood, for on the basis of it, the people received the law, what further need was there for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek and not be designated according to the order of Aaron? For when the priesthood is changed, of necessity, there takes place a change of law also. For the one concerning whom these things are spoken belongs to another tribe, from which no one has officiated at the altar.
That's Jesus.
You got it, brother. For it is evident that our Lord was descended from Judah, a tribe with reference to which Moses spoke nothing concerning priests. And this is clearer still. If another priest arises according to the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become such, not on the basis of a law, a physical requirement, but according to the power of an indestructible life. For it is attested of him, you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. So we got something to talk about in 2 weeks. Yeah,
That's a mouthful.
that's a mouthful.
that's
Yeah.
what we take in.
So what a powerful testimony to Jesus Christ and the superiority of his high priesthood
Amen.
and
Amen.
eternality of his priesthood.
I need to
Yeah.
read that.
Oh, yeah, great stuff. And we'll definitely pick up there in 2 weeks. So any other observations, thoughts, comments, questions on this morning's class?
I'm overwhelmed by, number one, the skill of these people,
Amen.
you know, being able to travel like they do,
Yep,
being plugged into God, you know.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It
absolutely.
really is. I mean, these people.
They knew what they were doing,
They
good and
weren't- They
bad.
weren't primitive, you know, we think of
Yes.
this, oh, here's these primitive people
Yes.
that don't even know how to, you know, don't have a bathroom in their house and, you know, that kind of thing. And we think of it that way, but these people were skilled.
Yeah,
They knew what they were doing.
they were people just like us, just simply
Right.
born into the world they were born into. If we were born in 100 years earlier, we'd have no concept of household electricity and phones and things
Right.
like that, and appliances. So this is
Yeah,
all,
we're spoiled.
yeah, exactly.
We're spoiled. Big time.
Well, they only fought during the springtime and it lasted up to when, did they quit? And we
Um,
started in the spring again?
Good question. Sometimes wars lasted years and they've had battles, that would be won or lost
Right.
over the course of the war, but the wars could last for years. Yeah.
Remember World War II was 5 years.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what I'm wondering.
Yeah,
like,
good
How
question.
they said the kings always went in battle during the spring, so I'm like, okay. But there would be years, so did
Yeah.
they take a break period and then?
Yes.
No, I don't know. I don't know if they sent, I don't know if they sent carrier pigeons or whatever. Hey, summer's getting on. It's kind of hot here. Do we want to wrap it up and pick up where we left off? Yeah, we'll mark where the game ended and then we'll. It's like playing chess. If you don't do it in one sitting, remember.
That's exactly what it is, I'm learning like with the Civil War and battles and stuff. It is a chess game.
Right.
It's, okay, we want to.
We'll go ahead and stop the share.
Strategically, we have strategic needs here. So how do we attain those? And,
Get the upper hand in one place. or the other.
Yeah.
You see, like, if you ever watch Gettysburg or Guys and Generals,
Good moves.
all the military higher ups, the generals would
Right.
get into, they'd have their tent and they'd have these big maps, and it's like, here's our goal. And they would move these pieces and then they would send out scouts and spies to try to, find out.
And some of these men were brilliant.
They were.
And they knew what to do.
I can't even understand. all
Where's
that.
Jubal Early? He's late.
Well, and they did it too with, World War
Close.
II and,
Right.
all the wars, it's not just going out there and
Fighting, yeah.
there is a method to it, and unfortunately, though, it is the common soldier that has to enact this.
They're the pawns.
And and so, and then that's why we have,
Yeah.
Good point.
Arlington National Cemetery
Right.
and all these places where
Right.
just all these soldiers are buried,
Anything else from anyone before wrapping up for this day's class? All good? Okay, we'll stop the recording.